Let's move on to another story now, and that is that a primary teacher is in a legal case after refusing to call a female pupil by a boy's name. So a primary teacher was sacked after refusing to call an 8-year-old schoolgirl by a boy's name or use male pronouns, and this has gone to a legal fight. It will be a legal test case. There is a judicial review against the governors arguing that the school's transgender affirming policies could harm children. The case is also against the local council. It will be heard next week in the High Court in Birmingham, and it's thought to be the first time a teacher has taken such action. Just to give you a bit of background, the teacher was suspended for several weeks last autumn because the teacher refused to use male pronouns and a male name for a pupil who had been placed in her Year 4 class. Now, she argued it could encourage harm to the child, to unquestionably encourage the belief that she was in the wrong body. An extraordinary test case. Joining me now is Jo Bartosch, who is a journalist. Good morning to you.
Hello, lovely to be here.
Really good to talk to you as well. I mean, this is an extraordinary test case. What do you make of it?
I mean, we're seeing a number of similar cases along these lines, whereby schools have taken it upon themselves after perhaps a training course. In this instance, it was Stonewall who did the training, but we've seen similar instances with Educate and Celebrate and Mermaids. There are lots of these organisations, and they take it upon themselves to adopt trans policies which affirm a child's identity, and that, or cross-sex identity, and that is, of course, against all of the evidence that we are now seeing come out in the CAS review, which is a review of gender identity services.
Indeed, right. Look, we're talking about 8-year-olds. 8-year-olds don't know anything, and I feel really strongly about this as a medical doctor. I'm deeply concerned. Look, it's absolutely brilliant for children to dress up, to assume different roles. I have no problem. I think it's wonderful and part of learning and growing and developing. But actually, I'm just deeply worried what some of these institutions are doing to our children.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of kudos at the moment in having a child who identifies as trans, and I don't think that can be discounted as a reason why so many parents are transitioning their children. It is not a neutral act. I mean, the CAS review has been very clear about that if you affirm a child in their cross-sex identity, I mean, children, they don't know about boundaries. I mean, that's part of being a child, and part of being an adult is teaching a child what's real and what isn't. And you can't change sex. You can't be born in the wrong body. And if a child feels like they are in the wrong body, that's possibly a symptom of something that deserves further investigation. But it certainly doesn't mean that they are literally in the wrong body.
But children grow, they develop, they explore, they try different things. That's what growing up is all about. And actually, I'm deeply worried that and we talk a lot in medicine about labelling and stigma, and the minute you start a child down that route, it is a very pretty much unstoppable thing. We've seen that with the CAS review in the Tavistock clinic, and we saw the number of referrals going up there and the way that those children, in my humble opinion, were mistreated. But also just in terms of the transgender policies here in this school. These are 8-year-olds, remember, letting the child wear a boy's uniform. I have no problem with that, actually, and to use the boys' lavatory and changing rooms. That cannot be right.
No, and I think it also puts the other children in a terribly difficult position because, of course, they have to play along. And I think that really undermines their boundaries, their sense of reality, their sense of, what's what. It's quite fundamentally unstable, destabilising to enforce those sorts of views on children. And fair dues to the teacher who's had the guts to say no.
Yeah. And how do you think this test case will play out?
I think we are seeing now institutions roll into action. I mean, it should never have been allowed to get this far, but we are now seeing lobby groups like Stonewall, like Mermaids, falling apart. They're finally being subjected to scrutiny. They're not the experts, they are lobby groups. They are not sort of impartial charities to dispense medical or psychiatric advice. Schools should not be turning to them for advice or information. And I would advise all parents to check their schools' policies. But I think as far as how it will play out, I am very hopeful that things are going in our favour.
Maybe, just maybe, common sense will prevail once and for all here, because I am deeply concerned about what we're doing to our children. Thank you so much for joining me. That's Jo Bartosch, who is a journalist. An extraordinary story, and we cover this trans issue so much, and these children are 8 years old. I just am deeply concerned what we're doing to our children.